We have a number of items on the agenda tonight, and I'd like to be sure that we have time for each of them. On the other hand, we certainly would like to move along. The first item on the agenda is traditional, is approval of the minutes. Could I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Those minutes can be attained, by the way, on the SVSU website.
Oh, boy, thank you.
And which sometimes, and if you have any trouble getting it, I see Frank back there, maybe you could check with him. I've had trouble sometimes pulling them up. Okay, we can move on. We have presentations, we have none. The code of ethics, so to be honest with you, I'm not, it's something that we do traditionally each year. I'm not really, Jim, are you familiar with it?
It comes from the Vermont School Board Association. I believe you all got a copy of it in your packet. So what the other boards are doing, they pass it around and sign it, and it goes on file.
All right, does anybody have any questions on it? To be honest, I haven't read the full thing, but there's a place for each of our signatures on this. Why don't I start it off with Fran, and we'll go around and sign it, and we can move on. Public comments, are there any public comments? Yes? Please give your name.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Jenkins. I'm here actually to speak on two different issues. One, I wanted to speak about in support of guidance counselors in the school counseling office. I did get to go to part of the education meeting last week, but I had to leave before it was over. So what I'm about to say is based on what I think was the outcome of that meeting, and I know that the Education Committee is giving comments later on, and so in case there were to be decisions made, I guess I just wanted to be on record. So I'm speaking in support of a strong school counseling office and for the need to have a full complement of guidance counselors. 2 years ago, we had 7 counselors plus a community school coordinator, and that community school coordinator did everything from work with students on dual enrollment to working with students on applying to college to helping them prepare for interviews and jobs, and even took them on to dentist and doctor's visits. And so it was a position that worked closely with kids in a lot of different capacities. That position also worked very closely with the community and attended meetings and represented MAU at meetings and brought information back to MAU on meetings. So that's a function that was pretty critical both to the counseling office and to the school. In my role, I'm a community member, but I'm also coordinator of academic services at CCV. And in that role, I work with the counseling office. I've worked with them for over 20 years, and it's been a very good relationship. I've worked with them on dual enrollment. I've worked with them on early college. I work with them on the Emerging Leaders program, which has had up to 30 MAU kids in a year work in that program. I've worked with them, on everything from college fairs to sophomore summit. So I see them in action a lot. And I want to speak in support of the counseling office because I think often we think that what the counseling office does is just sign kids up for classes, and that's really their only role there. But I would contend that they have a much more important role. They are the individuals who help students see themselves as their future. So they help students aspire to go to college. They help students aspire to pursue interesting careers. They help students aspire to looking at the world in a different way. So their role is really, really critical, and that requires them to have the time to spend with students to make that happen. Recently, the Vermont Board of Education has warned of a structured inequality in our educational system. For many reasons, including transportation, instability in living situation, and a lack of confidence, it takes focused effort to level the playing field so that all high school students who would benefit from the Flexible Pathways legislation can do so. And the Flexible Pathways legislation is a legislation that allows students to do dual enrollment. It allows them to do work-based, school-based, work-based learning. It also allows them to, it also now requires them to have the PLPs. We have very good data from the Introduction to College Studies class that CCVE offers free to all high school students, that students who see themselves as college students go to college at much higher rates. And that is true for kids who thought they were going to college when they were 5 years old, and for those who discover it when they take Intro to College Studies. Having a good early experience with college tends to increase the rate at which students go on to college later in life. So one of the important indicators of whether a kid is going to have an early experience with college is their guidance counselor. Students who take advantage of flexible pathways, whether it's college studies, dual enrollment, early college, or work-based learning, enter basically through two different pathways, parents or school counselors. If parents are the driver, then it's far more likely that the kids that take advantage of the program come from families that are with college-educated parents. Otherwise, it's generally a counselor who encourages first-generation college kids to take advantage of these offerings. To be sure that all students who will benefit have these opportunities, we must give kids the support they need. We know that poverty is a significant factor in our community. 44% of MAU students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. We need to look at the bigger issue of how we increase equity and access for all kids who would benefit at MAU. I know that we're losing one counselor position, although I just heard that maybe we're not losing that one counselor position, which is really super. And we have not replaced the community school-based coordinator position. I would urge you to make sure that we keep a full complement, at least 7 of the counselors, and that if we can, that we re-add that community school-based coordinator position. It makes a difference in order for us to really be able to offer what we can to our kids. I think we want to make sure that we are able to give them the support that they need. So that's my comment on guidance counselors. And then I wanted to follow up. Tim, I had sent you an email, so this is really the follow-up to that email. Back in August, Glenda Cresto gave a presentation on the draft model for leadership and administration, and I'm wanting to follow up and find out whatever happened to that draft. At that time, at the August meeting, a member of the public asked if they could have a copy of the draft, and the response from the chair was that it was not really fair to hand out a draft and to wait for the final model for leadership and administration to be issued, and that then we could have a copy. Glenda very nicely offered to meet with anyone. They could call her and she would talk to them about it. But that's really not an effective way for the public to know what's going on. So I think in retrospect, I would say that I think anything that's presented at an open meeting should be available to the public. And honestly, I would hope that we would hand out copies of anything that the board gets, that we also get if it's part of a presentation. So my questions are, it's been 8 months now, and I have not seen a final version of this, and I'm wondering if it's available, and if it is, if it can be made public. I'm wondering if there is a follow-up presentation to talk about how, how this model for leadership and administration is going, and its effectiveness. I'd like to know if the public gets an opportunity to comment on it or have any input on this process. And then my final question is, what is the cycle for the principal's annual review? When does that happen? Who gets to provide input? And are there public are there measures that the public should be aware of in terms of how administrators are evaluated? Thank you very much.
Just 1 minute. I think to answer your first concern about guidance counselors and support personnel for them, I think that you will be interested in the motion that will be made that will cover those, as well as some things that you haven't mentioned. In terms of the other issue, when did you send me another email? I had one way back in April or so, I think, but I don't know. I never got it.
Well, you responded to it.
Oh, that was the one didn't I have something sent to you on that?
Do you want me to tell you what you sent? What you sent back was that Jim was out of town and that you would respond when he returned.
Well, if I didn't, I apologize. If I didn't, I apologize for
All
it.
right, well, I would love to know the answers to those questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I can't answer that. Most of that would really come from Glenda. Glenda, do you feel comfortable answering that now, or would you like to handle it a different way?
I don't have the model, I do feel comfortable, but I don't have the model in front of me, and I
Okay.
would rather have the model in front of me when I answer the question.
Is it a public document?
As far as I'm concerned, it could be. I mean, I don't think it was handed out at that meeting, and that's the only time it's been put before the board. It's not posted on any of our websites or anything like that.
Could it be?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I don't want to seem as if I'm pushing this off, but what I'd like to do is include it in the agenda for our May meeting, and we'll be able to answer that more specifically at that time. I don't, as Glenda has said, she had a lot of things on her plate recently, and I want to give her the time to be able to prepare it and distribute it to you. I see no problem in passing something out to you that we're working on, as long as the people that are working on it, the administration, is comfortable doing so. But sometimes you have drafts and you want to do a little more homework on it before it becomes a policy. But any decision that is made on any issue really has to be brought before the board, and those decisions are public and are available to the public. I hope that sort of answers you. But I will be sure that it is on the agenda, and if it's agreeable with Glenda, give her some time on it so that she can answer that. Glenda, does that
Sure, that's fine.
that
Yeah.
make sense to you?
Thank you.
Now, wait a minute, was there something else too that that list?
What's the cycle for?
Oh, the evaluation. I don't know, Jim, would you like to speak to that?
I can address that at the May meeting also.
Okay, basically, it's the administrative prerogative to review those things.
It's done by the administration, not by the board, is what you
Yeah,
mean?
it isn't done by the board, it's done by the administration.
Is there an April deadline in the administrator's contract?
Who is it?
It's June.
I'll present on that at the May meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify that we'll be able to answer that, or Jim will be able to answer that in more detail at the May meeting. And, I'll be sure that it is on the agenda so that we get it. Are there any other public comments? Anybody like to address this board on? Okay, we can move on then, if they're not, over to the finance. We have the treasurer's report. Do we have anybody who's going to present that, Jim?
Have it in the packet.
Yeah, it's in the packet,
Yeah.
it's part of the packet. Does everybody have any questions on it?
I'll move it.
Thank you, we have a second? Second on it. Is there any discussion, would anybody like to discuss any aspect of it? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Very good. The budget status report is for your information. We have the Hoosick River Hydro project that we are extremely interested in. And we've got a number of people here that can speak to it. I'd like to start off with Paul, who is, as you know, is our chief custodian, maintenance man, keeps the buildings in good shape.
Director of Facilities.
Facilities, whatever else. And he is going to start it off, and then we'll hear from a couple other people.
Good evening. Paul Danstro, Director of Facilities for MAU. On the previous board meeting, unfortunately, we had the news that our solar consortium agreement ended up going nowhere for the various reasons. Jim Kosis in SVSU Finance Office, myself, mostly with Jim's assistants, looking at other opportunities and things that might be available. Tonight, Bill Scully would like to do a presentation on hydroelectric opportunities that could exist for us. If ma'am would turn it over.
Yeah, would you also, maybe Bill's going to do it, talk about what this board needs to do so that it can move forward, so that we can have an official motion if that is in order.
Okay. What I'd like to do is, after Bill's presentation, the board has a chance to ask any questions concerned. If a motion could be made, given the chairman, yourself, the authorization to sign a contract with Hoosick River Hydroelectric to receive net metering credit of, or excuse me, based on a 5% reduction off our utility bill. So again, after Bill's presentation, an opportunity to listen to it, let the board get further discussion.
Very good. Thank you. Bill.
I'm going to hand out a little bit of material here. I don't want to get you too far in the weeds, so take it home, read it. So there's an interesting opportunity, and actually we were moving along pretty far with some other meters until the Brownells, actually, I'm going to blame them for having a really good idea. So we're redeveloping the hydroelectric plant, the former hydroelectric plant at the Pownell Tannery Dam in Pownell, Vermont. In doing that, we're following the same model for the most part that we did with the Vermont Tissue site over on Water Street in Bennington. And we are going to build a net metering group. And I will get into what that is in just a moment. But effectively, we need use meters. So we were talking to a few different companies with these $2 million meters, which are very attractive to us, and we're very attractive to them because they want as much production credit as they can get at a discount. And in speaking with the folks from Pownell, it appeared that there was some interest for the town to join, and perhaps even the school, but certainly to have it presented. But I pointed out that we really need a lot more usage. And Nelson and Cindy both pointed out, well, why don't you go talk to MAU? And suddenly it just dawned on me that there was a whole other opportunity beyond our having a use, having use meters and us providing savings for those use meters. But there's a whole educational component. And I can't even begin to tell you the number of classes that we hold down there, just trying to not just re-educate people on where our power comes from, but how you develop renewable energy effectively and responsibly. And I think that the Vermont Tissue site certainly is the only site I'm aware of in the United States that improved the water quality when it went back online. So there's a lot of environmental sciences classes that we do. There's all kinds of opportunities. So suddenly I kind of took a step back and I really decided, let's go talk to the school systems about this, because there's a whole nother level on which we can engage. So when I'm here today talking about this, I'm not just proposing this for you, but you then become a cornerstone for other schools and other educational groups that we will begin talking to depending on your decision as early as tomorrow. We do have interest, they're just all smaller meters and none of them can stand alone. So let me explain a little bit about group net metering. So group net metering in Vermont acts somewhat like a cooperative. Our meter is quite literally spinning backwards the whole time, generating kilowatt hour credits. We then need to apply the monetary value of those credits to people's bills. Where it gets really good for MAU is that you have very large meters. So in this case, I will make the statement, nobody is going to beat this deal financially. I know that you've heard other deals, 22%, and if people brought me ideas that I could have unicorns, I would take it too, but that's no longer possible, and I'm not sure it even ever was possible. So when we're proposing 5%, if you look at a solar plant and what it can do in Vermont, the biggest you can be under net metering is 500 kilowatt. And just to get you down a little bit into the details, because it matters, The kilowatt is actually, if you, effectively the horsepower. It's a direct correlation to horsepower. It's actually the power of the plant. So then after 1 hour at 500 kilowatts, you generate 500 kilowatt hours, which is a unit of measure by which electricity is then sold. So the difference between solar and hydro, and here's a really big distinction, and keep in mind that we're slightly undersizing the Pownell plant, so it even favors more the hydroelectric model. Solar, you base the energy based upon, I think in this region, it's 4.2 peak hours of daylight. So you would take 500, which is the peak capacity, times 4.2 gives you your generation for the day, times 365, times the rate, which once the legislature passes it, hopefully this week, will be roughly 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which equals around 96,000, something like that, right around $100,000 a year in total production. When you compare that to the model that we're doing, we're around 700,000 a year because we're generating at 500 kilowatts 24 hours a day. So our production is 7 times that of a solar plant at the same size. So it really is the question, do you want 22% of a dime or 5% of a dollar? It's not quite the same math, but it's pretty close to that. So while we're offering 5% versus 22%, it's 5% of a significantly larger number, equal to 35% when you equate it to solar. So anyway, the way this works, we're going to generate kilowatt hour credits. Those credits then would appear on the school's bill, and they're monetized. So it's just the number of credits times residential rate 1, and that is subtracted from the bill. So in this case, and I'll just offer by example with a much smaller bill, let's just say that the Green Mountain Power bill was $1,500 and we generated $1,000 worth of credits. You would pay Green Mountain Power the $500 because that's the balance due and that's all you would owe them, and then 95% of the remaining, so $950 comes to us and the schools get to keep 50. So we're obviously talking about much bigger numbers than that. It'd be great if you guys could get away with a $1,500 energy bill every month. But that's really what we're proposing, is that you pay us 95% of the credit. Other than obligating yourself, there really is no risk. You don't have to do anything. You're not putting up any money. You don't have to do anything really. All you have to do is agree to actually accept the credit and then pay us 95% of it. So a lot of this helps if I can answer some questions. Does anybody have any questions about this that I can answer for you? Yes?
So you're telling me it doesn't cost us anything?
Yep.
That we don't have to give you any money to start this?
You got it.
And you're local, I take it?
I am.
Okay.
Well, I'll never be a local. It's been 26 years, but I
Sorry. Local enough.
I live locally.
Yeah. Now, this is one plant you have, or you have the tissue mill in North Bennington?
Correct.
Or Bennington, where you're at there. And you have 3 others?
We have a few others that we're building. Pownell is the one we'll start this year.
Okay.
Our goal right now, and we're on target, I think we're a week behind after 3.5 years, which I can live with. We're on target to commission by April 1st of 2017. So technically, actually, we can't we can't actually generate production credits until January 1st of 2017 because we need the new Rule 5.100 to come into effect with the Public Service Board. So we can't do anything until the beginning of the year anyway. So our date is first. We're planning on doing this within the first quarter of next year.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
These are in Pownell and the other plant over in towards North Bennington, those are induction generators?
They are. We have 2 induction generators at the Bennington plant. We'll have 1 induction generator at the Pownell plant. That's correct. And the Pownell, there's a lot of other things we're doing too. I put it in a lot of the literature, but we're cleaning up. I don't know if you know this, but it's actually an odd site in it. It's the only site like it in the country where PCBs from former industrial era upstream in a different state polluted the river, and then we're all trapped in the sediment in the river coming down and behind the dam, and they continue to repollute all the way down into the Hudson, which New York is super psyched about. So we're going to actually get in and clean those up. So we kind of set up a really weird model, and people are starting to realize the value of that, especially with PFOA in North Bennington and things like that. When we did the Vermont tissue plant, we cleaned up dioxin, PCBs, and lead out of the river. Nobody's going around doing this. It's actually part of hydroelectric redevelopment that you end up cleaning up toxins that have been trapped behind the dam. So that's another aspect of it. Yes.
Would we in any way be liable for any actions that you take? For instance, I mean, just hypothetically, if your generator produced some toxin for one reason or another, that then the EPA would require you to clean up, are we at all liable to share those costs with you, or would they all be you?
They're all us. We have no liability.
I did talk, just for the rest of the board, I did talk with Jim Kosis, who has been working on this, and he has taken the document to an attorney. Jim, are you here somewhere? I thought you
No,
were.
we sent it to the board attorney. That's where,
No, I was going to say, he's got an attorney going over it to look for.
yeah, Steve, that's the board's attorney, that's who's reviewing it.
Okay, oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
yeah. Well, we have an attorney, for the board's information, who is going over this to be sure that,
Well, the issue
Go
that
ahead.
we're looking at was, because we're in a contract to buy solar, we're going to make sure that we're not violating that contract if we enter into a contract for hydro. And the answer, I don't see Jim back, the answer back is no. The answer is that's not an issue, right?
That's a non-issue, and at the same time, I also have the lawyer just looking over the contract with Hydro, with the Hoosick River Hydro LLC, just to make sure that the contract between us and them will be working out okay.
Yeah.
So he's doing two phases of the consultation on the leases, or on the contract.
I have one more. Do the regular ratepayers make up that extra 5% that we?
No, and now this is a really complicated question. So one of the biggest differences between hydro and solar over the past 10 years is that hydro isn't subsidized. So in theory, net metering is, in general, everybody gets the same rate. It used to be that solar got a higher rate. That doesn't happen anymore. The goal is, group net metering was built really actually to engage larger meters and to set up a bunch of the smaller plants. The smaller plants, anything under 5 megawatts, which is huge, all cost about the same amount of license. So the cost per installed watt for us as a smaller plant is more expensive. So the legislature came up with net metering, which other states have done as well, to try to get these plants online. So the answer is a complicated answer, because the answer is, to a small degree, yes, although we're generating power at the same as residential rate 1. It's not an artificial rate. Your rate could be lower than that. So in theory, it could be a slightly higher rate, but on the other end, we're actually generating power and charging the grid in remote areas, which actually makes the rest of the energy more efficient as it travels through the grid. So it's an increase and a decrease, and I don't know where the balance in that is, other than it's not subsidized technically.
I can't pretend I understand all of that, but anyway.
It's complicated.
I'll take a look at it. Are there any other, Dave, you have your hand up?
So this is a 20-year agreement that we're looking at. Did I understand the question about conflict with the agreement or the contract that we signed with solar to mean that we could still enter into an agreement with another solar
Yes.
provider if one came
Yes.
along?
Or if, we're under a 2-year agreement with who we signed the solar, right? So if they can if the caps come off and they can put a deal together, we can still do a solar deal with the vendor that we've already signed a contract with, but
Okay,
if the situation changes with the state.
okay. I mean, as long as that's clear, I mean, that's confusing to me because it seems like we're buying the electricity only once. We're only using one supply of electricity.
Correct.
And we're gonna.
The agreement we have with the Solar Consortium was consultant to go out and then provide, or look for and see an opportunities for a solar provider that
Right.
we would then be presented to us, and if favorable, could enter into an agreement. At this time, though, there's no viable solar provider that's been brought forward. The ones that had previously been brought forward fell through for the reasons that the solar provider was never in the approvals to produce the power, the Green Mountain Power underneath the caps. So at this time, there is no solar provider that's available to us.
Okay.
And this 2-year agreement is, the only thing with the agreement is, in basic terms, that consultant would then provide us, this might be a viable provider, then present what rates might be available at that point, and then we would consider if we'd want to enter an agreement.
Okay.
And
So-
as far as the 20-year with the hydro, Billy can correct if wrong, preferably it's a 20-year agreement, however, open to a 10-year agreement, but at the 8-year mark, we would then notify Bill if we wanted to stay within that agreement or pursue a different option. So it would not necessarily be locked into a full
And
20-year.
the advantage
That's
of,
correct, yeah.
the advantage of doing that might be that we might find 10 years or 8 years from now, another hydro provider who would offer us a better deal.
That is
potentially.
possible.
Possible.
Is that the only reason why we might be?
It just leaves options if, at an 8-year mark, if different things change out in the market.
So just again to be clear, this wouldn't preclude us from also taking advantage of net metering credits through a solar consortium?
It would, by statute, depending on the meter. So you can only, the way the legislation is written now, and some really large meters are trying to change this. The way the legislation is written now, there can only be one source meter within a group. So we can have a bunch of use, Green Mountain Power would be furious, but we could have 100 use meters if we wanted, but there can only be one generation meter. There are people that are trying to change that right now. I don't know if they will or not because I'm not terribly interested in that. I mean, it's just not something that's in my wheelhouse. It would not preclude you from putting, if you decided to put solar panels like on top of the school or something like that, you can do that because it's behind your meter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't think that was ever, in the current,
Right.
I don't think that was ever a
Right, but I just wanted to be clear, you could put in solar panels, but they need to be on your side of the meter. You
Right.
couldn't have a solar array somewhere else sending you power and us sending you power.
So you characterized the 22% deal as somewhat fantastical, which may be the case. I don't really have any way of knowing, but half of that, a 10% arrangement would still be better than 5%. So I just want to say again, it sounds to me like we're locking ourselves in here to 5%, and that's the best we'll be able to get for
Just one other thing,
duration of the contract.
just offer the board to consider, as of right now, the earliest I would see, just looking at the way the regulations are based on the caps not being lifted yet and solar providers available, I wouldn't see us getting any type of solar opportunity until probably at least 2 years, or potentially a little bit longer. We could have an opportunity to gain a 5% starting
Right away,
next year. Then at the 8-year mark, we could always take a look at what the markets are doing. If we do nothing right now, of course, we're, gain no gains.
Right.
Okay. That's,
I did want to speak to your 5%, 10% of solar is better than 5% of hydro, which no, you need to be at 35% to be equal.
Well, what we were led to believe, I think, was that we would see an actual reduction equivalent to 22%, and maybe that's not the right number, somebody else just said 22%, of our electric bill.
Right, so I ran the numbers on that. I don't see how that's possible, because when I run the numbers, and I'm going to give me doing it in my head, margin of error, but I can tell you that the solar array is going to generate around $100,000 a year in income under the current net metering, the current and proposed net metering statutes. At $100,000 a year, and I think that 22% was proposed for SVSU for the entire supervisory union, which has $500,000 a year.
It wasn't just us, though. This was a consortium of 9 or 12.
Okay, but
supervisory unions.
even at that size, you can only generate that 100,000. So at that size, if they're saying 22%, the electric bill in SVSU is, and I'm not positive, but I think it's around $500,000. So at $500,000, that would be an obligation of them to give you every single bit of their generation credits. They make no money, and in fact, I think they have to subsidize it with a few $1,000s more.
I had the impression that it wasn't a single, this organization that we were working with was in turn working with more than one provider or generator. So, and again, I'm vague on this, but I'm just, concerned about locking into something. I love the idea.
Right, the math just doesn't work out. I mean, you could stick with that, but the math just doesn't play out. I mean, even when I run it, if I look at, let's just take the high school, I can speak out loud about budgetary numbers exactly, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, $241,000, so if they're gonna give you 22% off that, they're saying they're gonna give you $50,000, they're gonna give you 50% of the money that they're generating back. I don't think that's possible. I mean, if you can get that, go for it. But I really don't think it's possible, because there's just no rate structure out there that would allow them to give you that. I mean, for solar, most people are talking 10, 15%, which is, again, which is less. It's a lower number, so.
Dave, I think part of that, at least my understanding was that part of that money, they started off at 30%, and they went to 24%. Part of that money was going to have to go back to the supplier of it. Is that right, Paul, the way it was done? So we weren't going to realize the full 22% in terms of reduction of bill. That was going to be the saving, and then part of that money in the same way that you are going to be paid for your services.
I'll have to look back at the original documents, Tim, to see how
Yeah.
exactly it was phrased. As I understood, though, at Dave's point, the first provider, that the solar consortium, that we were in agreement with, the first provider, that had fell through because they weren't going to be able to provide. Then that was the second one that was approached. That one had fallen through at the lower rate at 22. But I'd have to look at how that 32 and 22 were broken down to look in detail.
All right, are there any other Dave?
Could I ask
Sam,
one
Joe.
more quick question? This is the dam, right?
That's the dam, yep.
If there's quite a bit of space above the dam face to the top of the abutment, if you added a couple of feet of flashboards there and increased the output, would that change the amount that we're getting?
No, in fact, we already are. 2.5 feet to be exact is what the exemption
Okay.
allows for. The historic flashboard height is 2.5 feet. We're rebuilding it with the
Okay.
original design specifications under the FERC license.
Okay,
Thank you.
if there are no other questions, Ron, would you mind reading that motion so that we can then ask for a second? Paul has it there.
Well, I don't think we'll get a better deal.
You seem very young.
Make a motion giving the chairman
It's not my lifetime.
the authorization to sign a contract with Hoosick River Hydro LLC to receive net meter reading credit based on 5% of the production credit.
Second it.
Was that a second, Leon?
He said.
Any further discussion?
How many years? And then we need to be clear on what sort of a deal we're getting into here.
But that's in the
What
proposal,
term?
right?
Well,
Yeah.
It's not.
so it says 20 in the contract, but Bill
Yeah.
just said it could be less, so.
We would entertain a 10-year. We would ask that it be an automatic trigger at the beginning of year 8 unless you decide not to renew. So you would have to decide not to renew, and actually, we have this worked out somewhere, but a certain number of days prior to the end of the term. So it would be right before day 1 of year 8.
So that would be incorporated in the document that I would be signing.
Yes.
Does every board member understand that that would be part of it?
Should the motion reflect 10 years? then?
Right,
10 years.
that's what I was
With a,
looking
with
for.
a renewal date of 8 years. Fran?
I think the fact is, and I can ask that gentleman, Mr. Scully, the ratepayers don't pick up anything, am I correct?
No.
Like the solar, okay. I just wanted to make sure. I think it's a good deal, but I just wanted you to clarify that.
Okay,
Well,
so,
yeah, absolutely. I want you to be comfortable with it.
Thank you.
Richard, are you comfortable with the rewording of the motion?
and I'll separate,
And we had another second, so.
We'll second.
So we have a motion on the table that reflects the concerns that Dave expressed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Very good, it passes. So if you would just work with Paul or Jim or whoever is easier, and I'll be available to sign it. Okay. We have another, Paul, do you want to go over this? Was this in the package?
No, because it,
Okay, I didn't see it.
no, it didn't, because it came up after the finance committee meeting yesterday.
Why don't we pass one of these out before we go into it?
What Paul's passing out is reflects requests for spending from fund balances in wood chips and fuel oil to pre-buy some equipment this fiscal year. And he's passing what that list is out. I got one more up here too if someone else needs it.
Good evening again. So this year we had a very light winter, which provided some interesting opportunities, as well as the fact that fuel oil was at a lower price than historic in past years. So the 16 budget, of course, was built, upon worst case scenario, if it was a heavy winter, as well as if, prices of fuel, et cetera, were a lot higher than what we ended up paying. So we're in a good position now where we have basically in the FY16 budget, significant funds in both the fuel oil account and the wood chip accounts at both the middle school and the high school that I would propose if we could reallocate out of those account lines into capital project improvements as well as new equipment that would be bought in the 17, 18, 19 year budgets. If we could use the advantages now and go ahead and get those. Other things, so what you see is 3 documents in front of you. The first one has a spend plan for the high school. So the first one is spend plan for the high school. The second one, spend plan for middle school. And the third one is, and I prepared as a very separate item, would be for a middle school vehicle purchase. Now, I'm prepared to answer any direct questions on any of those lines right now. I know it's kind of last minute, the board might need time to digest some of this information. The only thing that would be kind of critical, though, if I could at least get the approvals on the middle school and the high school for the fob access and buzzing system access for the doors, because that might require bidding out, the public bid based on dollar amounts. That would be something I just want to start moving.
And we need to get it bid and invoiced prior to June 30th. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with approving all of this until we really had a chance to go over it in more detail than we have. And as Jim said, this is the first that all of us have seen this. So if it's agreeable to you, what I would propose, if we can get a motion, would be to do those 2 things that you need to do right away so that we can get the bid and move forward with it so it can be
So it'd
incorporated
be
in this year's budget.
capital project A on both proposals. Yeah.
Okay.
And again,
Capital
the number in there right now is an estimate, but that estimate is pretty close to what I think.
That would be capital project A for the high school and for the middle school, which would be the front end of security upgrade in both of them. Is that right?
That's correct.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
Tim, have we discussed these projects?
No,
Can we
no.
discuss them now if we haven't?
Yeah, I think, let's discuss that one, and then we'll save the other, we're not gonna vote on the other ones.
So the
now.
ones that Paul's asking for approval to move spending into, let's just talk about what those are.
Paul's ready to discuss
We
it.
have not discussed them, is that what you said?
Well, I don't wanna really move on them until we know more about them, and we can discuss them at a finance meeting in our next meeting.
Well, he wants to move on them
But
tonight.
I would like, if you would like to discuss the 2 that I think we should vote on now,
That-
which would be
yes.
A in each
Yeah.
one.
And
That's what
Paul
I-
is
that's what I'm
prepared to
asking.
do that.
And Paul is prepared to do that.
Okay.
Okay. So for item A, if we start at the high school, what we're proposing would be fob access as well as a buzzing system similar to what's in the elementary schools, as well as at a central office as an increased security measure at both the high school and also would be at the middle school. At the high school one, it is also separate, would also be with the CEC included, so it would not necessarily be one side's buzzing access to just run around, go into the other side of the building. But that is, obviously, that's different funds and different boards that make those presentations too. But it would be for the front door at the high school, as well as the back door out, the maintenance tunnel that goes back out.
Could you
to the
discuss
center.
that solution for the back door? Because one of the holdups before on, and this has been discussed for many years now, one of the holdups has been with the outlying buildings at the high school, what do we put in that allows the flow of students back and forth, but still secures that back door? And Paul has a proposal for that.
So within the system, what it'd be an access, a buzz-in with, closed camera back up to the administrator assistant's desk at both middle school and high school, so they could visually see who's at the door. During the times, but it would also be a computer, controlled type system, where we could also have the abilities, if during like the bell hours, know that we're going to have a mass transit back and forth, disable the system, but then once the period starts again, reactivate the system. So that's was being in discussion. So that way that would reduce, the potentials and still leave the access back out to the Red Brickell Vocational Building, the Student Rec Center behind the high school as well. The other key piece of the system would be within, if we start going to the fob access, again, it'd be computer program behind it. You could program individual fobs to have, access only during certain times, access to only certain doors. It would also be something that we could expand into the system at later dates if we go on to keep adding additional fob to, so as an example, just arbitrarily the interior hallway doors or something else, so we continue to do that, and that's something that we could build on.
Sign into guidance, sign into the nurse's office, all of that.
And it would also be something where a fob could be deactivated, if a person, terminated from, faculty type position, deactivate that fob so you can no longer have access into the building. So that's all would be inclusive within the scope, developed for this project and put out for. Does that help answer your question? And within the middle school, it would be a similar system. It would just, though, be the main front door, then the side from the parking lot.
And Dave, Paul, you have reviewed this, as I know you have, with both principals. I don't know if they want to comment on how they see this impacting their building.
Do you want to comment?
Only that we've had a number, over the years, the 4 years I've been in the building, we've had visitors and we've had folks review the building, and one of the major pieces they want to address is securing the front door. And so this moves in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've had a couple of incidents that we have locked external doors, and this would eliminate the need to do that.
Thank you.
Or at least mitigate threats.
Yeah.
Or potential threats.
Yeah.
Excuse me, did I see your hand up, Ed?
Yeah.
Oh, Dave, I'll get you in a minute.
Just a quick question, when you're talking about a fob, are you talking about a key card? That
Right now, it'd be
reader?
similar to ones that are already in place at the middle school and
Okay.
Central, it'd be similar to something like that. There is other systems, like a swipe kind of card access, but
Well,
right now, focusing on this.
there's cards that in some installations actually replace the employee ID card because they've got a picture on it, and you just swipe it past a sensor,
I
and
understand. Right.
it records who came in and who left.
For the system I was
Let me
looking at,
look, I'll get
it
you.
was not that. The fobs themselves, though, could be programmed similar. So the one issue to me would be in the system, okay, Paul Dansero.
Yeah.
So if I access the building, it would then be recorded in as Paul Dansero came in middle school front door at XYZ date, time group.
Thank you.
Dave, I'll get to you, Frank.
Coaches that use the back of the gym, they have a fob that would open just that, probably?
That could be built into it, yeah. Right now, that did not have those two doors included, but that would be something that we could have build on into a system once it's in place.
What's to prevent someone sticking a sneaker in the door so that kids could come in, I come in at 10 and they come in.
The only thing to prevent that would be supervision or, our normal, during the normal hours, security teams that go around the high school facilities or any other administrator or teacher will. But there's no other system at this time.
Frank?
Well, first to address Dave's question about the sneaker stuck in there, there probably could be a monitoring system if a door is unlatched, so you can see that it's, a door is ajar, and somebody's watching that. But the question I have is, what's the traffic like, not during the bell passing time between that downstairs back door going out to the other buildings on campus?
There's still traffic, but it'd be reduced. So you would have the closed circuit TV, the buzz tied back to the administrator.
They can buzz in, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions? Dave?
Sorry. Does the, would the system have to include cameras at the doors so that somebody could see who was there and
Yes.
buzz the person in? That's sort of the way it would work. So here at the middle school, you'd have cameras at the two main
Yes.
entrances?
Correct.
Okay. And is there, and I guess my question is why, you've sort of answered it, Glenda, but why do we need to do this? And I know the simple answer is because we're concerned that somebody's going to come in and do something bad. And is that, a legitimate concern and worth spending $50,000 on? I guess, yeah, people would say so. How real is the concern? And what are we losing by installing a system like this, if anything? In terms of the sense of a free-flowing public, parents can come in and out and not have it feel as much like a fortress as it might feel with a locked door.
Tim?
And I agree with Dave, you have to balance that, not scaring people. You want people to feel like this is a school and not a secure military site. But at the same time, as we do drills on a monthly basis required by the state, one of those drills is a stay in place where you have faculty, staff, and students find a secure place in the building and stay there. We do room checks with security teams and all that. And, there are spots in buildings that we don't lock because you have staff going to those spaces, and it's a spot that experts have, security people who've come into the building to give us, suggestions have said you should address that. And I also think that Dave had a good point. The sneaker in the door, I think that's becoming less of a problem every year because it's a reflection of where we are working now. And I think teachers understand that and are encouraging kids that, you can't leave the carpet propping the door in the back. That was a problem 10 years ago. That's less of a problem now because I think people understand, my responsibility to keep the whole building safe and are cooperating in that. The other piece, unfortunately, is you have elementary schools in the BSD where it is part of the process of going into a building now. You go into a secure room, you identify yourself to a administrative assistant, and you are buzzed in. And so you have community members and you have family members who understand that this is a reflection of the society we live in, and this is how we send our kids to school to make sure they're safe. It's an unfortunate, but I think a realistic view of the world right now.
Very good.
If I may, just one other point.
Yeah.
Of course, what I'm also asking is just the ability to reallocate this money. Of course, a full scope request for proposal be developed, bid received if required, and then that would be presented to the board with even further detail at that time to make decisions on the project.
Very good. Ed?
I support this, but I would like to see a mechanism built into the software so that if there's a sneaker in the door, that it triggers an alarm.
I'll find out.
And somebody goes off to look and see why that door is open
Fran?
or unlatched.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I mean, we've talked about this at Shasberry, but, they used to say the same thing at Columbine, that they didn't want anything like that, and it's a totally different story now, and I hope it never happens here. But, I mean, it has happened around the country, so you got to be prepared. And it's not always something we want to do, but better safe than sorry.
Thank you. Yeah.
The only question that I have in that respect is that we got cell phone use, and what's to stop someone that's internally getting a buzz and going to the door and letting somebody in and not being picked up by the camera? If we're going to have camera system for somebody coming in and say after the hours, you got 10-minute, 15-minute period passing, and then all of a sudden the doors go, and somebody gets a call and says, "Come open the door, let me in," and the doors goes open. We need to think about how we would manage that, because we all have electronic devices now to call somebody inside the building that would come in to our aid to let us in if we wanted to. Just to think about that, that's all.
There are all sorts of situations I think we can, and I think Paul made a good point that this just gives him the opportunity to send out a bid. And once that's done, I think we can take a look at those bids, and if we have questions that aren't covered in them, we can move ahead. Katie?
I was just thinking about the amount of traffic that happens between buildings. Counselors come from one of the buildings and walk with students back and forth inside the buildings. Students are sent from a guidance counselor at Cordova. There are a lot of reasons for people to go back and forth, but not at the building site, so I think that traffic is pretty heavy. That to have a buzzing in system would require another staff person in the office. I'm just trying to think of how the buzzing in piece
Well,
works.
it would be, so it would be basically doorbell here, little closed circuit TV, tied back to the main administrator assistant's desk in front of the main office. So, so if I approach the door, buzz, yes, who is a college student, go forward, then from that desk position, press a button.
But any staff member would have a fob, and they could just get access themselves. They wouldn't have to buzz in.
So it would just be, like, I wouldn't be able to send my student from the student center to, without knowing what they have to buzz in.
Right.
So thought a little bit about who would do that, and would it be an extra person in the office? I'm just sort of like, okay, it's a duty, answering phones.
It would be an increased load. It would be an increased load. So if it's height of day, phone's ringing, Glenn is asking for assistance, I'm at the front desk, and that one person's there, somebody might have to wait a minute or two. Is probably the best answer.
I can comment a little bit on that, Katie. I mean, I've worked in an office recently where we've added that to the flow of an administrative assistant's duties. And heading into putting in the system, we had a lot of the same concerns that have been aired here tonight. And one of the major concerns was, how much is this going to add to the general flow of work between the administrative assistants, and is it going to take somebody away from something else? And in the couple of years that we dealt with it, it really was like just answering another phone call. I mean, it was just became something that was very second nature. The closed circuit TV, at least that we had there, gave very clear images so that you could totally, you knew exactly who you were letting in, and it was just, you'd hear it, you'd glance at it, you'd realize who it was, you'd buzz it in, and it was just something that became part of the general flow. And both of the administrative assistants that kind of shared the responsibility for covering it, because you do have to have somebody on it all the time, didn't feel that it added anything to their workday at all. And we already have, coverage between 7-ish and 3 of the phones, and it would just probably be worked, within that. But we've also got the flexibility to put it wherever we think it, goes best. But a lot of those fears did not play out. And so I'm fairly confident that it would just become second nature. And particularly knowing that we can program the door to be open at, during passing times, potentially throughout seminar, looking at the lunches in the student center, things like that. I mean, we would be really mindful of how we would do that. And that really changed the game for me, just that flexibility. So, if that helps.
Very good. Okay, I'd like to move ahead on this.
Well, I'd like to move it, the motion to accept item 3A and on the high school and 3A on the middle school for the proposal, to go out to bid.
Very good.
For that.
Any question? Do I have a second, first of all, on that? Ron, thank you. Second, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we will have a finance committee before the next board meeting to go over these other suggestions when we have a little more time to go over it.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Tim, I'm sorry,
Yes,
I'm
Dave.
voting no, so.
Excuse me?
I'm voting no,
Oh, I'm
and you
sorry.
didn't give me a chance to say no, so. Opposed.
Okay, very good.
Why? I don't think it's necessary.
All right.
I don't
We
think
can,
stops.
we can move on then. Consent agenda?
Backpack, or you don't have to come out and check
Fran?
the back.
Say I'll move it.
Have a second?
I think it's necessary.
Thank you, Ron. Have a second? Any discussion on any of the action, any of the
I have one,
items?
I have one on for the hiring of coaches,
Okay,
and I just, thought I had the thing pulled here, I think I do. It's the basketball,
right.
I think for the winter basketball, why would we be approving that now?
Tim,
Yeah, I know Tim's, I don't know if Tim Brown's here or not. but-
thought he was
He
going to be
isn't.
here.
I
Okay.
know a little bit about this. Do you have a
yeah.
specific question?
Well, I was just wondering, it's April now, and I don't remember doing these like that. The winter basketball, would we be doing that in August?
I believe it's a varsity position that opened up and was advertised because Tim anticipated really wanting to be selective in the choice. And the individual who's being proposed for that is from within, and it's a good move, and we're ready to go now. Tim followed protocol in terms of the hiring process, and he now has, I believe, advertised the position that leaves open. Because these are high-profile jobs.
Okay, so this person, this person's replacing is gone then from the system?
Yes.
I take
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's-
Resign their position.
I got
create
you.
the opening.
And
that's why
the fellow that's been teaching boys basketball is
Right.
going to do girls basketball.
No, I know, yeah.
And there's a committee that's been formed. Dave, maybe you could speak to it just briefly.
When Tim has a group of candidates, for the guy's job, he's got a group of people that will be involved in the interview process.
Very good. Fran, does that take
I
it?
have one other one, and the warrants, excuse me, warrant 2015, it's page 56, check number 67691. It's tennis balls, quantity 6. I'm taking it for 6 packages or 6 dozen.
cases, maybe.
It's $395 for tennis balls.
I would assume that's 6 cases.
I know I've got the case here, the package here, I can probably go through this stuff, but I just wanted clarification of that, that's all.
Let me have somebody get back to you.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm sure it's more than
Idea
just
of
6.
Yeah.
Key card
Okay.
to get in. Or
That's all I got.
We have a second. Are there any other questions on the consent agenda?
Because I know I walked.
If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
There was nobody around.
Is that an aye? I'm holding issue this time. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
Very good.
Okay.
All right. Policies, we have none. Administrators report. Tim?
So there's some kind of system.
Question for Jim, do you want to include an update or just announcements?
No, I think you should put, as we said, we want to put on everyone's front burner that this is being discussed.
Absolutely. Okay. So let me do this. Let me do some thank yous and then I'll give an update because I can anticipate some questions. We had a good week last week in the middle school. It's always nice to wake up and read my paper over Cheerios and read good things about schools. On the 12th, we hosted a career fair. I want to thank Hannah Green, who is a guidance counselor here at the middle school. She was able, with the help of her guidance department and an intern, we invited 17 different businesses to the middle school and hosted our first career fair. Students were each given a passport, and they were encouraged to travel through the career fair and collect 6 different stamps from 6 different areas as a way of encouraging them to kind of get outside of their comfort level. I want to thank the businesses that showed up, a wide variety of businesses, and I thought the students did a great job, and we got very positive feedback from staff, from the students, and from the community. So we look forward to inviting them back next year. It'll also probably lead to some collaboration, as we don't want to be crossing lines with the high school, who also has college fairs and things like that. So it'll be a good project for collaboration going forward. I also want to thank Patricia Johnson, who is a counselor here at the middle school. She and her group of students did an excellent presentation on Thursday evening. We had dinner. We had invited community members and school members and families to come in. The students gave a presentation of what is called the YRBS, it's the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. This is a survey that is given to kids every 2 years. Talks about the various good things in their life, but also the challenges. And the kids did a really nice, the students and Patricia did a very nice job of kind of breaking down the numbers, what it means, identifying strengths in our building and areas that we could be working on. Again, we had probably at least 50 members of the community join us. It was nice. We also made the paper, so that was a nice positive to see that. Also, a reminder, I sent a robocall home last week to our families and students. It's a reminder, it's an amazing amount of clothing that is left behind by middle schoolers. Our locker sound is overflowing. So I reminded families and students to please, if you're missing that winter coat, your favorite pair of jeans, possibly the shoes that you just had to have, they may be at the middle school, and you should check. Because we're in the process of laundering things, because middle school clothing tends to compost. And if it's not cleaned, we're going to have to make a plan to make donations to areas, to charities and things like that. But please, seriously come in and see us. We'll point you to the pile, and you can have at it. The update that I was Jim and I have been talking about this for a couple months now. An idea that is not new to me, but I've been thinking about it a lot in the last year. The middle school right now starts its school day at 7:30 a.m. We start our first class of the day at 7:30 a.m., which goes against every piece of scientific literature about when the adolescent brain wakes up. And as a result, as you walk the hallways on any given day in the middle school, you will see students in a bit of a daze, attempting to wake up with large cups of coffee and Red Bull and Mountain Dew, all kinds of carbonated drinks to try to snap themselves awake. There really is no reason why the middle school goes so early other than bus. The bus schedule has been set up. The school day for us is although Woodford would beg to debate this a little bit, but our day goes from 7:30 in the morning until 2:15, which means that it is a total of 6 hours and 45 minutes between the first bell and the last bell. Mr. Colkeen has been supportive. I went to him probably a couple months ago, and I said I'd like to try to come up with a schedule that would have us starting later at the middle school. As you can imagine, there's all kinds of challenges to that because we share a bus run with the high school. And for the immediate future, the end of the day really cannot be tinkered with. 2:15 is our dismissal time. We can't go any later than that because buses have to then go out and collect elementary school kiddos. They have to be available for athletics. So really the only place to tinker with is at the beginning of the day. And so my proposal is to have the middle school start at 8 o'clock in the morning and dismiss at 2:15, which would make our school day 6 hours and 15 minutes. It would be the exact same length as the high school. And Glenda has been supportive. We've had conversations about how that would happen, and it's not a perfect solution yet. But one of the options that we are looking into is having the buses deliver high school students first, because the high school starts classes at 7:50 and releases students at 2:05. Mike Gardner has been consulted. We've talked to the Teachers Association. There's no concerns around contract. The contract says that teachers are to be available for 7.5 hours, and we can set the time of start and end. But I feel that a later start would allow us to get closer to what is better for our kids, which is allowing them to wake up at a time that middle schoolers should be waking up. Just for reference, the ideal time is 8:30 to 9 o'clock. I recognize that that's a huge leap for us, but I'll take the half hour to start with. My next conversation, actually Glenda and I are scheduled to sit and talk to the elementary school teachers this next Monday at 4 o'clock. We're going to sit down and talk to make sure that the beginning of the day there are just some questions about could it actually happen. The bus company seems to think that it could, but it's a continuing conversation. And Mr. Colkeen thought it was important that this board knows that we are having those discussions. Any questions?
Just to comment, feedback, I think it's an excellent idea, long overdue.
Thank you.
I would add that the adolescent brain doesn't suddenly change when students get to 9th grade and suddenly become, alert at the hour of the morning that they're expected to be at school, even though it's 20 minutes later. So while you're looking into this, a solution that changes the start time for the high school, and obviously the busing is if not the only factor, is one of the most significant factors there. The buses have to be ready to pick up elementary school students after they finish their morning run, dropping off to the middle school and the high school.
That is correct.
Right, okay. So.
The impact of sports.
What's that?
And the impact of sports runs.
Impact of sports, right, yeah. But if you're not changing the end date, the end time, but just the start time, then, and if we're okay with that, you've asked us to consider cutting the school day by 30 minutes, which, 30 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, that's significant.
Very good. Are there any other, Dave?
Tim, I wanted to comment on your academic expo. The man that does the choral presentation, I thought that was a heck of a deal. He had a large number of kids. He had music from the 70s that I enjoyed, and they were good.
Yeah.
But whatever his name is, give him a pat on the back. He did a nice job.
Yeah, that would be Matt Edwards. He is our choral director, and they did a nice job. And I agree with the music selection. I appreciated that tremendously. So I could recall all the songs that were played. And they did a nice job by bringing that large performance group in, along with Jay Sager's band, the jazz band playing in the library. Really helped bring more people into the building for that evening. So it was really appreciated. But I will be glad to pass that along.
Very good. Any other thoughts, Tim, Glenda? You good?
I'm all set.
Okay, so the high school report includes the fact that spring sports has started finally. Both our softball and baseball teams are currently undefeated, having finally gotten to play 2 games and 3 games. I want to thank Paul and his crew for doing an amazing job keeping the grounds ready with this incredibly unpredictable April weather. I also want to thank Christopher Barnes and Christina Gabris and Katie Schoenbeck and Amy Thaverge for constructing a schedule that made SBAC testing work and work well. We've got one more week, and I think next week we're predominantly focused on loose ends and makeup testing. And then we will be finished with SBAC testing. Come May, AP testing will start. We have kneecaps for science on the 19th and 20th, I believe, and we're almost through the testing season at that point. I would like to say to the community, to families and teachers and the board, to remember that particularly SBAC and kneecap testing are only one measure of student success, and there's other data points and there's other points of achievement, and teachers know kids and they use this in conjunction with other assessments and their own experience to improve teaching and learning at the high school. I also want to thank, and I'm not going to mention all of the names because there are many, many people to thank for pulling off an amazing sophomore summit, including people from Bennington College, Brooke Remington at the high school, Jeannie Jenkins, and the team that they put forth to make the sophomore summit happen, which happened last week and was a success all round. Career Week happened at the same time, and again, Brooke Remington does an amazing job keeping Career Week organized, working on Sophomore Summit, and making sure that the students who leave the high school for field experiences, internships, and are working on senior projects are all taken care of during this time. On Friday, the 22nd, the Youth Summit happens at the high school, and I encourage the students in the community to come to that. And finally, this morning, Jim Cross and I spent an amazing hour at the Bennington Museum. beginning a partnership with them that is going to combine our work with biology and bioethics in a current exhibit that they have, 3D Here and Now, that is kind of bringing together resources that Jim and I didn't know were in the Bennington community with 3D technology that is pretty amazing. So I encourage you guys to check that out, and I really want to do a public shout out to the Bennington Museum for reaching out to us, because this partnership in conjunction with the artists that made this exhibit possible will really bring some new, very provocative ideas into our biology and bioethics classes. And I think that's it for me.
One thing, Glenn, what's the name of the group that sponsors these kids from the high school to go to local organizations and help serve meals and do those things? There's a group that goes.
Interact?
No, they go, Dave, maybe you know, when they have things, for instance, the museum, there are a group of MAU students that go and wait on tables.
I think it's the Interact Club.
Interact
Yeah.
Club, anyway, Interact, whatever it is, they do a great job, and I've heard many, many nice things about them. And
Yes, they do.
whoever organizes it and gets it going certainly deserves a pat
That
on
would
the
be
back.
Dan Lucy.
Okay, very
We'll
good.
thank him too.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we can move on. We don't have a student representative. Education?
Yeah, so the Education Committee met last Monday, and I think a lot of the people who are here tonight, board members, were there, either as part of the committee or were listening in, so this will not be new to most people, but out of that committee meeting came several recommendations to pass along to the full board, and I'll start with recommendations for a couple of new classes at the high school that were proposed and that the committee approved unanimously. The first was for a short block reading writing lab tutorial that would be offered in conjunction with an English class that students are already taking where he or she might need some extra support. This would be a pass-fail course with no budgetary impact by adding that class. And if we want to take these together, the second new course was for a special elective in the Bridges program. This would be a semester-long, full credit, long block course. I'm reading here from draft copies of the minutes, so if I get any of this wrong, the committee hasn't had a chance to look at it yet. I have it as a pass-fail class.
I think we decided that evening that we would convert it to graded.
Okay, so that's what I
So it will be
remember too.
graded.
So this would be a graded rather than pass-fail. And the committee, again, recommended that the full board approve those two courses.
I'll accept the motion.
I'll
to
move
accept Both, this is for
Both, do them both at the
Very
same
good. Do you have
time.
a second to it?
Second.
Thanks, Ron. Ron, second. Any further discussion on it? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions?
One,
Excuse me?
opposed.
Opposed? Very good. We have one opposed.
We also spent a good amount of time discussing the alternative program and the math position that was not funded in the original budget. And I know the Finance Committee has met since then and discussed this as well, but from the Ed Committee, we had a recommendation that the board hire a math teacher to assist in the alternative education program, and that motion passed unanimously, as well as a motion to hire an additional academic mentor for the alternative program, and that motion passed unanimously as well.
And the Finance Committee reviewed it and is also recommended that it be passed. So I'll accept a motion.
I didn't see this before.
So,
Have a second?
I guess I
Ron,
do.
thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Gotta look around, I missed it a couple times. Very good.
I'll abstain from that.
You're abstaining, very good.
Okay, and then the other topic was the guidance, the staffing of the guidance department. And again, I know that most of the board was there and understands that the word came down that we couldn't proceed with the original plan to hire an administrator for the guidance department who could also, administrator also being able to have a partial caseload of students. So that position was taken off the table, and we voted at the committee meeting, let me make sure I got the notes correctly here, then we voted to hire an additional counselor and essentially keep the staffing at the level that it currently exists.
Very good. Are there any questions on that? First of all, do I have a motion to accept that? Fran?
I'll move it.
Okay, move it. Have a second?
Second.
Very good. Yes, any discussion, further discussion?
Could I just ask, is that a full or part-time?
Full-time.
Now instructor?
Full-time.
Matt?
For the alternative ed program.
Yes.
Program is full-time?
Right. Okay, we're still on the guidance file. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Very good. Abstentions?
Fine.
Ed, are you abstaining, or I can't see?
No, I'm going to vote no on it.
Okay, so we have 2 noes, and am I correct in that? All those in favor signify by raising your hand, please. Okay, so that is the correct amount. Any further?
There was one other thing to come out of the committee meeting. The question was asked whether the committee could begin a conversation about graduation requirements, high school graduation requirements. And I said that I would like to take that back to the board and have the board give us that direction if that's what the board would like us to do.
Very good.
So present that.
Jim, let me usurp change places with me, if you don't mind, because this leads into it. The committees were, I appointed the committees, and you all received copies of those committees. I'd just like to make a few comments on them and on the general committee setup. I think it's important that we have committees so that they can go in depth and look into different things that need to be looked in before they're brought to the board in more depth than we would have time to do right here at the regular board meeting. And in order to do that, we have to have ideas that come from the board, or they could come from the community, they could come from the administration, whoever, that would be brought in an appropriate way to the committee so that they could discuss them. For instance, we've had people that are very interested in Nelson, for instance, in STEM programs and how we could foster that. I'm not trying to pick sides or do anything else, but I'm saying those are examples. We have Nathan, who's worked very hard with his agricultural committee, not only in developing the program that we have at the middle school, but also works very hard at the what's the initials?
That's a Food Service Advisory Committee. That's a SCSU committee.
Right, but still it takes someone there to do it and make the recommendations and follow through on it. The Finance Committee is pretty self-explanatory, and of course our life in many cases is run by the Policy Committee. And once again, that's a situation where many of the policies come down from SVSU. And I think it's important that this board looks at those policies through the eyes of MAU so that our interests are represented. And when we have a policy that comes down to this, that it has the support of those members who are better informed than we are at the very last minute. I know that Leon has worked hard on this for many, many years, and it's not meant as a criticism at all, but I think that in order to fully understand the impact of a policy, it's important that we have somebody on the MAU policy committee that will let us know the impact of these policies on the way we conduct our business. Also, I think it's important that when we make suggestions, there's always a lot of talk about, change, we ought to have this, we ought to have that. But I hope that when people are thinking about change, to use that word, that we have some constructive ideas, specifics, that we can then bring to the board, and the board can then, if it pleases, dole those out to the different communities, different committees. Dave's committee could work on whether we wanted to say credits and how they'll be awarded. We have somebody else who could work on expanding the agricultural committee policies, and finance, of course, are all part of it. So I just wanted to let you know my thinking on that, and I hope that any of you that have constructive ideas that you would like to bring before the board that then can be relegated to committees to look into in some depth would do so. Jim.
I wanted to discuss with the board a direction that the Act 46 SVSU Study Committee is heading, one of the directions. Just to give a quick overview, by 2018, under Act 46, structure is going to have to change in some way, shape, or form. An accelerated merger, which isn't going to happen, conventional merger, which would have to be proposed to the state by November of 2017, an alternative structure. Those are other things that have been talked about by the board, and an example of an alternative structure of some way, shape, or form. We could convince the Secretary of Education and then the State Board of Education that the way the SU currently is configured and works would meet the requirements of Act 46. So the SVSU Act 46 Study Committee, made up of members from all the different school districts that are in the SU, has been meeting, holding public forums in each of the communities. There isn't a member from MAU on the Act 46 Study Committee, and that was by the design criteria given to us by the state of Vermont under Act 46, because that Act 46 Study Committee has to have a balance of membership equal to the proportion of how the towns are. So the recommendation was that if you have a district that's has a union high school, don't invite them into the discussion initially. They can be advisory, but they can't vote because it would throw off that mix. So one thing that we've heard as we've gone through the public forums in the different towns is there seems to be agreement that most people are pleased with how the Mount Anthony Board structure works, how it's configured. And one of the suggestions, and this is allowable under Act 46, is that we consider doing a modified unified union school district, which basically is the Mount Anthony structure going pre-K through 12. So I think I'm a little ahead of my conversation. I will be discussing this with the SVSU meeting next Wednesday, but you're first in the lineup, so I want to because the MAU is at heart of one of the directions this discussion might be going to, I felt that the board should be aware of that. The slang is that it's a modified unified union school district, and it does comply with Act 46. I won't go into all the details of how it works, but this is what's going to happen soon. On Monday, the SVSU Act 46 Study Committee has a meeting in Brattleboro with the State Department of Education. Hopefully we're going to get some questions answered. I imagine this will be one thing discussed along with alternative structure and conventional merger. All that have, each one has different challenges that need to be met to help this process move forward. What I also will be asking at the SVSU meeting that I think that they should be expanding their study committee to now include members from Mount Anthony Union to, which means I'd be back at the May meeting asking for members to join it if they're in agreement. Because if this MUD proposal is going to move forward, then of course this committee has to be part of that. So that's, just wanted to put that on everybody's plate to let you know that that's been discussed, and maybe you've already picked up on pieces of that from comments that have been made at different, at the, whether it's North Bennington's public forum of the SVSU study committee. It's an attractive model to some people because it's simplified and it's a structure that everyone in the region already is familiar with. So that, because the structures of a consolidated board under Act 46 would be proportional voting, it would be district-wide voting, similar to how the CDC does, or a hybrid model. And whether you know it or not, the structure of this board is considered a hybrid model, and it goes back to a Vermont Supreme Court challenge to this school district in 1975, and it still stands as part of Act 46. So you might be hearing that, but I wanted you to hear it from me.
Very good. Any questions? Leon, did you have a question? You look like you wanted to.
Well, I didn't have a question for Superintendent, but I had a comment for you.
Okay.
And the comment was, I didn't know how to take the comment you made concerning the Mount Anthony interest in the policy when the last 22 years the policy has been Mount Anthony as the founder of all the policies throughout the SVSU and the leader in that. And that it may be some misunderstanding of how those are managed, are done, but Mount Anthony don't stand alone, and that's the key here, is that everything happens is faulted through Mount Anthony, through all the other districts, and all the other districts form something. It's just that a unified effort by SVSU to keep individuals from being targeted, from not having the correct information or correct policies to be consistent throughout the district, and keeping us out of court as to why they moved from just Mount Anthony to SVSU, and they've been faulted that way for the last 22 years. So it's interesting to note that, that this board needs to understand that process, and I'm welcoming additional members because that's what we've been fighting for, is to have more people involved in development and understanding that we're not alone here. There's other people out there.
Good. Thank you for clarifying that. Any other comments? Ed?
Just one step back to the vote on the hiring of an alternative program math teacher. I abstained on one vote and voted no on the other because right in the middle of this, I was handed a sheet that apparently the Finance Committee had worked on, which I never saw until this meeting, where the costs are ranging of an increase in the budget of $148,000 and down to $82,000. And I was kind of lost as to what I was voting for, and that's why I made the votes I did. And I think we need to get this kind of information before this board, before we decide, before we vote on something.
Well, your
like
Finance
that.
Committee was called Monday. The meeting was yesterday, so this agenda and packet was already out.
Right. No, I understand it, but
Minutes
we need to do
minutes and
better.
attachment are in the emails.
There you go.
It's in your email.
It's in your email.
Okay, well, I didn't get the email this afternoon.
Anyway, there's many circumstances, but you're right. And as I said at the beginning, the way that we have I guess, been forced to deal with this situations that the Education Committee made their recommendations on is unusual. We really should do that at budget time. In other words, the budget time is the time that we write the structure, finance the different programs, and we work from there. This has been a bit of an exception, and but it was necessary.
On the funds, I mean, you see that sheet that, so we're estimating guidance counselor, like around 70,000, talking around numbers, 71,000 for the math teacher based on what we use, the family plan for health insurance and average master's plus 7 teacher salary. Of those, there was 4 positions actually that were discussed at the Education Committee last week. And all those positions, there was only the salary for 1 in the budget, and that's what you see there. 104,000 salary and benefits is in the budget for what was maybe the supervisor of guidance or whatever term we ultimately used. So you have 104,000. You also have, we've estimated so far that we have $22,000 in savings from new hires and what health insurance plans they would go to. So we're getting close to what we need for those 2 salaries. From the academic tutor, estimated that we're about $48,000 short in next year's budget to fund those 3 positions. Today, Paul identified part of that proposal that you saw and some of his pre-buy savings that he can buy and taking inventory of what he has stock. He feels he can reduce his spending next year by at least $49,000 that will get us there to fund those 3 positions next year. As Tim said earlier, it's still too early in the year for us to know what fund balances are elsewhere and where it's going to, what we'll be rolling into. I'm confident that we do have the money for those 3 positions, but where you will see a bump is when you do next year's budget. You'll see a slightly larger increase in salary and benefits because those positions will be in the budget next year, so you're going to see that, tick up.
It emphasizes the importance of creating the budget as we do it. I'm not going to get into it now, but as you know, we start in November, and it places a lot of emphasis on the administration to have their programs well in mind, and the Education Committee and this whole board to take a good look at those proposals and be sure that you're comfortable with them as we go forward.
Well, let's remember, though, that did happen to a degree.
Right.
And what was approved by the board, then we got legal opinion that it didn't function that way. So couldn't go forward.
Dave.
Question for Jim about the Act 46.
Yes.
And the proposal that you just mentioned. Would 2 questions, I guess, really. Is the idea that this entity, this board, would continue to exist and would expand to include K through 6 or K through 5?
It would have to be revoted by every community in the supervisory union.
Yeah.
And then it would be, this board would, the modification would be of this board, so it would then, my understanding, necessitate then a whole revote for the configuration of the board.
Okay.
So it wouldn't, and I could be wrong on this, Dave, and hopefully there's some questions that we'll have answered again on Monday, but I don't see it as that this board then just picks up pre-K through 12. That would be, you'd be voting on a new, because you are not a modified, unified union school district. You're a union school district.
So it sounds like it would be a new entity.
A new
from
entity,
scratch.
yeah.
Then would that accommodate North Bennington's situation?
I don't believe that it will, unless something changes in the current law, because they hold dear school choice for pre-K through 6 because they're non-operating for that, and the law as it currently is written, all grade configurations have to be the same for the unified district. So it doesn't allow one district to maintain choice. But I'm not saying that couldn't be modified or couldn't be, considered as part of our proposal that we go forward with the state if North Bennington desires to still pay part of it. Because if you've been following the discussion, they have also had discussion about going pre-K through 12, non-operating, and asking to withdraw from Mount Anthony.
Okay, any further questions for Jim? Are there any other issues to be brought before the board? Any other issues? Dave?
Just going back to the request that the board, if the board wants to have the Ed Committee look at graduation requirements, if the board is okay with that, to review them and begin a discussion with the principal and see where we are.
So Dave is asking this board if it would like to see the Education Committee work and gather information to present to the board on graduation requirements. Is that about right, Dave?
Yeah, and Ed, and it's Ed's suggestion, so if you want to say
It
something.
partly came from CDC Ed Committee meetings where we had discussions about the number of credits that are available for CDC courses that Mount Anthony grants. And the way the state law is written, the state approves CDC programs and they'll say this program is worth 1 math credit, but the sending high school can modify that if they want and increase that credit. And as part of the credit discussion, increasing graduation requirements, I think that there should be a discussion of what the credits are for CDC programs as well as the MAU graduation requirements.
Well, I think it's an interesting topic, and I would encourage the committee to, this is exactly the sort of thing that a committee can do in depth, whereas the full board, we just don't have time to do it. Does anybody have an objection to pulling that together with members of that committee? Fran?
I don't have an objection. I mean, we used to have, they used to have a lot more credits than they're getting now, so
Right.
now we're going to be going back to, that's what it sounds like, because we had
Right.
reduced them.
A discussion of that.
Yeah.
And we may want to take a look as we do it. For instance, if you talk to someone like Nelson, he may feel that we should have another credit for
STEAM.
math. For STEAM. Hide your eyes. Anyway, another math credit that would be required for graduation. Rather than 3, we would have to have 4, right? Is that where it goes, Katie?
Yeah, 3, correct.
Right, right. Because math is tied into so many of those STEM procedures. Okay, any other things that anybody would like to bring before this board?
Motion to go into executive session.
Okay, executive session for a legal matter.
Yeah, I see it here, but
Second it.
didn't.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, why don't we adjourn to
All I
the,
saw was a message for the finance committee.
Will you see if the conference room is unlocked?